Welcome back to Uncensored CMO, everybody, and returning guest this time, the most uncensored guest I've ever had on my podcast. I know you've guessed it. It's Mark Ritson, and we're here to talk about the biggest stories of the year. We've looked through the archives on LinkedIn, we've looked at Marketing Week, we've dug out the things we're all talking about to have a proper conversation about what on earth's going on in the world of marketing. You're going to love this. Mark, as always, is properly uncensored. Here we go. So listen, mate, you've been around the world a bit. What are you seeing, like, globally? How's marketing doing around the world? How do you assess
there's lots of things going on. I mean, I'm reserved to the English-speaking world. So I've done Canada, obviously Oz, Canada, US, UK in the last 2 weeks. There's a couple of themes. That everyone is depressed. It's a weird depression, right? Yeah. It's a mix of, obviously, economic recession. Everything's down. There's no growth. There won't be any next year. Everybody knows that. But it beats a global pandemic. So there's this curious lack of downness about it, even though everyone's down. And you feel it's it really is palpable, right? So that's the weird. It took me a while to work that out. But you go to Vancouver or Toronto or New York or London and you go, the streets, the pubs feel exactly the same. No one's, it's not bad. Like when the Queen died and Truss was Prime Minister here, it was horrible for a few weeks. It's not like that because everyone's like, you know what? This is better than being locked up in my house with a glal pandemic. Although we are locked in with your producer.
Well, we are. I know. Yeah, exactly.
So we apart from us. So that's the first thing I'm definitely seeing. And I'm no economic expert. I don't see any change next year. Why would there be? And I don't think there'll be much in 25 either. I think we've got a couple of like this soft, depressed, full employment, shitty years.
Yeah.
It doesn't then dispel the hypothesis that we might get a roaring 20s. Students of history will know, right, that the 20s, 100 years ago, war, depression, and then boom, it could still very much happen. So let's hope so. And the other thing, which, isn't politically correct and isn't going to make me any friends, but I continue to observe how weak American marketing is compared to the rest of the world. Which, again, that can come across as I hate America. I love America. I lived there a long time. Some of my best friends are American. It's probably the best country in the world. And they were the great marketing leaders for 60, 70 years. You went there to learn your trade. Man, they're off the pace.
Why is that?
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, they're really obsessed with the peripheral elements of culture and culture war and, what your slide... No, it's not what your slide says, but have you ticked all the boxes in the various representations of your slides, which is important, but not the only thing. And there's kind of this I think, corporate dishonesty where no one tells anyone to go fuck themselves anymore. That's a part of business, you know what I mean? To respectfully tell each other, that's wrong, mate. You're off the pace there, right? No one's doing that anymore. And when they do, or they're getting some kind of formal complaint about it. So I feel quite sad for American marketers. There's all these people saying, when will we get an American, Pete and Les or Byron Sharp? I'm like, you guys are so far away from that. You don't even understand the current literature. And if you compare it to what's happening definitely in the UK, also in Australia, also in parts of Europe, which has never happened before. I'm old enough now to be able to say that. We're talking about the good CMOs in the UK. They are pretty good. They all know the basics. They're on top of the effectiveness literature. They know your stuff. They're fueled by decent data. They're doing good testing. They have decent strategic awareness. They're very distinctive. I think we are living in a great time for marketing and advertising because some big thinkers, Ehrenberg Bass, Field and Burnett, have produced great work, and the practitioners follow it.
It does feel like that, doesn't it?
It does.
We've gone from an era of, they call it brand building, and then we got into performance, and then it feels like we've kind of come out of that with a pretty balanced view, and marketers, evidence-based marketers now that are really killing it on a number of brands.
It's totally right, and I think part of it is it's not being locked up in the universities, who are an appalling bunch of fuckers, right? So universities take public money, at least in business schools, do all of this very academic, very slow research, and then publish it in journals that literally nobody has access to. It's a terrifyingly bad knowledge dissemination model. So when you start getting Ehrenberg Bass going, basically, here's a book, or join our centre, or Pete and Les give a talk, or do a manuscript, or the IPA does a thing, and we stick it on YouTube, we've now got a much better dissemination machine, and I think that's what it is, right? That's what it is.
I find this really drives me wild. I can't remember what debate I was having with Byron on LinkedIn, but he quoted like a gazillion, links to articles somewhere.
Written by him.
Yeah, exactly, right? And I'm like, honestly, mate, like no one in marketing actually reads that literature. Nobody. I mean, this is a problem, right? You've got to get it out of the journal of whatever. Yeah. It's got to get in the public domain, right? It's got to be translated. It's got to be made available or synthesized or whatever.
Well, he's got a double loss there because it's academic, but it's only his institute stuff. Like a couple of weeks ago, I mean, I love it when he publishes stuff, but he'd done a little monograph from Ehrenberg Bass about long-term brand building and its importance. And there's no fucking reference to Field and Burnett. And I actually commented, because I very rarely comment on that kind of stuff, and I'm like, hey, whenever anyone mentions salience or distinctiveness, you're right up them going, you cannot mention this without Ehrenberg Bass. So here's you talking about long-term brand building and the impact and the regular. Did it never occur to you, you might want to reference the seminal work from 10 years on this, because you're basically saying what those guys said. And it doesn't take anything away from Ehrenberg Bass's work and its brilliance and massive influence, which it's part of the improvement,
totally,
a big part, right?
Yeah.
But
huge.
I wish they stopped smoking just their own crack and have some other drugs involved. Yeah. It's pathetic, frankly. If you're going to be a scientist, let's reference other work other than the stuff that you're brewing in your own laboratory. You know what I mean? And everybody knows it's pathetic. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
But anyway, the problem I run into repeatedly is marketing people's inability to hold two contradictory thoughts at the same time, right? I love Ehrenberg Bass. Byron Sharp is my hero. Ehrenberg Bass get things wrong. Byron fucks up, right?
Yeah.
Wait, what did you say? I said both of those things at the same time, and it doesn't cause me any problems at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally know what you mean.
Can we try and get our heads around that fucking point?
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's such a good point. Festival of Marketing.
Yes.
Top 100 CMOs. Very exciting.
Yes.
To see them all out there.
The global reach around.
Indeed. But I thought I'd congratulate you. Rob Mayhew called you the Gary Vee of Australia. That must feel good.
He's a fucker. We did the promo for it, for Festival of Marketing, me and him. And it's kind of, I just followed his script, right? He's so good, man. He's so good. And he coined that term when we were doing the promo, and I thought that was
genius.
That's the ultimate compliment.
That stood out, didn't it? I love it.
No, he's very funny. I think he knows the industry so well that he's actually able to be funny on such a, in a way no one else understands.
He can pick the tiniest little thing, can't he, and turn it into.
I'm honoured by that.
You're
title.
on it, mate. Yeah,
I should have to get some business cards.
I think we need a T-shirt, don't we? But look, I'm big respect for our top 100 marketers. Marketing Week do a great job nominating them. I have never won. Just putting that on the record.
So just to be clear, because I don't pay attention to many things. Is it an actual ranking from 1 to 100, or do they group it up?
No,
still?
it's a ranking. Well, it's ranked and grouped, so it is a ranking. But it's like, I think it's top 10 retail, maybe it's top 10 FMCG.
But do they have like a Grand Prix at the top?
I think so. I'm pretty sure they do. Yeah.
Do you know who won?
Yeah,
I
don't actually.
What a load of crap.
I should have done my research.
Who won?
Who won? Breaking news, sort of thing.
He's the best.
Exactly. But like, it's a big deal, isn't it? And but anyway, this year I've made a top 100.
That boggles my mind. I forget sometimes that you're a CCO/CMO.
I know. I change it regularly.
I just think of you as a DJ now.
Exactly. Well, the
Michael Parkinson of effectiveness.
Can you guess what top 100 I won?
So which category?
This will blow your mind.
Well, it would have to be in media, wouldn't it?
So, performance marketer. Most influential performance marketer. Performance marketing world. I'm number 26 on the performance marketing world top 100 most influential marketers.
Wait.
I know.
But all right, I'm totally stumbled by that.
No, I was as well. By the way, they listen to the show, so I should say, amazing publication, Performance Marketing World, just to get it out there before I upset.
But you're all smoking crack. Is the second
number
line.
26 most influential performance marketer
in the top quartile almost.
But I love this.
Performance marketers. I love this. Is that global or UK?
I'm going to pretend it's global. I don't know if it's global. I'm going to call it.
I don't think it's going to matter.
But look, but what it does, right? Firstly, two things. Firstly, performance marketing recognizing some stuff outside of the normal performance marketing box. I'm like, fair play. That's not bad. Extending
I think when performance marketing starts ranking people that don't do performance marketing,
exactly.
In the top 100,
it's a thing. It does, doesn't it? And secondly, like, I've had the kids take the piss out of me forever in my career for you don't really know how marketing works, John, do you? Sort of thing. I'm just going, you're talking to the 26th most influential performance marketer. Just have you know.
Well, I think it's
like I've got a lifetime of defence now against the accusation.
I don't think it works, though, until you go on LinkedIn and profess your humblement at your ranking.
This is where I've
then
gone
you
wrong.
can lock it in.
Okay. I need to do the humble brag, don't I?
I don't want to brag, but I'm humbled.
I'm humbled
to be 26th.
To be 26th in the world on performance marketing. There you go.
Well, mate, it's a life-changing accolade.
It is. Anyway, we better get back to some big stories of the year because the kind Russell Parsons at Marketing Week did send me...
The bearded champion of Marketing
Week. Indeed, I know. Must shout out to him, actually, thank him. He did send me the most read articles you've written this year.
Oh, that's interesting.
I know, exactly. But being the pro that he is, he wouldn't totally reveal the order, but he gave me the list, right?
That's interesting too.
Yeah, I know.
Fucking articles, can you tell me?
I know. Well, do you get to know, by the way?
I have zero interest in any of this.
You just put it out there.
A couple of things, having done 20 years as a columnist, there's no... correlation between how long you spend on a column and how popular it is, and there's really no rhyme, no reason to what's popular or not, as we're about to
Okay, well, let me
out.
ask you then. Let me flip it. So I did two things. I got him to give me this, and I looked at your LinkedIn and ranked your LinkedIn. So
what did you rank my LinkedIn on?
On the engagement, right?
Public
engagement.
You get engagement. Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. So you know that one. You know what's number one on
I know
engagement.
what number one must be that Fiat ad.
No.
Holy shit.
No.
A bazillion views.
Yeah. Maybelline.
Hey?
Yeah, you know the Maybelline. It was a tube and a bus going through
Yeah.
The Maybelline post.
Mind-boggling. That's 1 second.
Yeah.
On a toilet.
Yeah.
At 11 o'clock at night.
Exactly. Going, we could learn something from this.
Look at this.
Yeah, a stunt. It was like when you used to float something down the Thames and then put it out there and everyone would talk about it. It was the CGI sort of modern version of that, right?
It's interesting, isn't it? Now, because at one point that's like, oh man, you got like 1 million views or something, right? But of what value is that to me? Almost zero, right? Because it's just someone gone, there's the Maybelline stuff.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah. It's just the
you got that nice combination of the,
Yeah, it's just visual stunt. But I thought it was interesting.
Holy shit.
We'll skip past number one so we can have a proper conversation. But okay, top 5 most read Marketing Week articles. Let's start with Guinness.
Yeah, that's a good story. Neil Shah is at the Marketing Academy talk in London a year and a bit ago. And I'm talking there as well. We all talk at the Marketing Academy at some point. And so we sort of stood to one side while someone else is talking, and we introduce each other. And I say, how's it going? And he said, actually, we're pretty close to becoming the best-selling beer in England. And I'm like, fuck off.
That's pretty amazing.
And I'm saying, is that true? And he's like, yeah, we really are. We're very close. I said, could I write about that and how you've done it? And he's like, and Neil is a genuinely quiet, reserved, humble guy. Do you know what I mean? And he's like, well, look, if we really get something, I'll let you know. I'm like, okay. And he didn't. So I just emailed him a couple of times. Come on, mate, let's do it. And then it was a trade journal was saying they're number one. And I like, come on, mate, I'm going to write.
It's out there now, come on.
I'm going to write about it whether or not you help me or not. He's like, okay. So we did a quick interview. And the one thing he did was, he said, I don't want you to mention my name. I want you to talk about the team.
So you did.
So I mentioned his name, right? Because other people have said this before, but what they're really saying is mention my fucking name, right?
Yeah.
And he said to me, you can't publish it. I don't want my name in there. Put the team in there. That's the quality of the guy.
That's nice.
He said, Diageo's not a culture where we do this kind of thing. It's about the team, and it is a team effort. And I thought, fuck, it's the real deal, man.
Yeah.
So I wrote that up, and it's interesting. Like, I get credit for making that even more famous, but I did absolutely no work on it, obviously. I just think that's where Neil did all... It's a recurring theme, right? He did all the basics of effectiveness brilliantly. I'm sure Neil is the first one to say absolutely nothing unique or different. You've got distinctiveness, you've got tight positioning, you've got multimedia, you've got long and short, you've got good econometric modeling in-house, and you've got long-term strategy, right?
Yeah.
And what do you know? It works.
It works,
It
doesn't
works.
it?
It works real well. And that's good. That's good. I'm happy because... it's a good brand, but it's also a good brand management team.
It is.
Diageo are doing very well at the moment.
They're doing really well.
If you notice as well, if you look around, John, at all the brands that are like I did the Brand Z thing this week as well, at top 500, 100, whatever. They're all the traditional bread and butter brands like Dove, Guinness, Cadbury, Do you know what I mean? Vodafone.
It totally is. But have you noticed like all the kind of overvalued D2C brands that had crazy valuations 2 years ago that are losing hundreds of millions of pounds a year, right? That all that is out, and all
it's part of it,
we know where the money is.
It really is a turn to traditional stuff.
There is,
really rather delights me as an old-fashioned person. But it's good news. I'm pleased for Neil. I'm pleased for Guinness. And I think it's a great story. And it goes without saying, I mean, I'm going to promote myself now, but that article's well worth reading.
It's really good.
Because again, there's nothing fancy in there. It's just...
But you're right, you hit it on it. It's doing the basics really well. I mean, the distinctive assets, I just find that is such a case study in using your distinctive assets really well. I mean, every time I see Guinness, I'm like, fair play.
Neil's the first one to say, though, that it's the natural beauty of the brand. Right? I think it's the third most distinctive brand in the world.
Totally.
According to the data. So you kind of got to screw... I mean, most marketers would still screw that up and turn it pink, right? But he kind of got that and made with that. But the rest of the work around it, he sort of went into category entry points, if you look at it. I mean, it is an unusual brand. We all drink a bit of Guinness, don't we? Not as much as certain people we know, but it is a brand where in the winter you feel like a Guinness, and in the summer you feel like a Guinness. You know what I mean? It has a lot of entry points. So I think they very successfully pushed those. The big point of the article was they built up a big head of steam during COVID when all the bars were closed. So the first beer, and they talked about it that way, what's the first beer that you get when you get back in a pub and they open, will be a Guinness.
That's true.
So they built up that pent-up long-term demand, even though you couldn't get it in the bar at the time or go to a bar. And I think that's a brilliant... That was definitely part of their strategy.
The entry point is a good one. I mean, even the outdoor campaign last year with the surfboard, that was flipping... We tested
Playing
system
it everywhere.
Actually, again, we saw it in the testing we did, like, I had not thought about having a Guinness in the summer, trigger.
No, they've pushed it hard.
Very powerful,
They've used that sort of playing with codes with the category entry points very nicely, right? No, they'll just get better, that team.
Yeah, and their activation's amazing as well, given, Diageo do that really well.
So was that number 10, or was that just one of the 10?
That was very high up the list. Basically, we combined.
You've combined.
I say this research. I combined Marketing Week performance with your LinkedIn performance.
Very good,
and that comes out top 3.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Linked to that, actually, the long and the short of it article as well also was top 3 on both.
Which one's that?
LinkedIn.
The one that you gave me data for?
That one, yes. Yes.
Well, that's you, not me. So that came out of... Which one of the team was it that collared me?
So that would be Nick.
It was probably Nick, I think.
Yeah, because we'd done this whole... We've been struggling a little bit with this in terms of like... So obviously, long and short do different things, all the kind of thing we know and love. We were seeing, it was Audi that sparked it. We were seeing Audi nailing the long and getting these really good uplifts short term. And they got this IPA case study. It's absolutely wicked. And we were seeing them nailing it on the short as well. And we just, hang on, what's the data telling us? And
it's a very long campaign. It isn't,
and what we were working out is the longer you go, the bigger the campaign effect, the more the short works. We were seeing their short pay out, get better and better and better as they were sticking to their long sort of thing. And we're like, oh, this is interesting. It's just...
So that explains it, because it happened exactly a year ago. Last year's Festival of Marketing, I'm in the pub on the corner, of course I am, during one of the, I'm sure, scheduled breaks. And, Nick came in, and he's saying, I must have talked about long and short or something. And he said, that was great, he talks about long and short. It's not true, though, And I'm like, how do you mean it's not true? He went, well, it's long and short versus short. And it was enough for me to go, all right, then, what are you talking about? And I said, all right, send me the data. Let me have a look at this. And I even think he sent it to me on the plane.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at the famous chart and going, and it's quite your charts are always beautifully simple, and that's definitely a plus point. But it's quite a complex point, because what you have to show is when you have great long, you always get short as well. But when you have great short, you don't automatically get good long. And
totally.
It takes a little...
It does.
I've played around. I've showed it to several clients. In order to get that point across, you've really got to be quite elegant in how you strip the data, right?
We did cut that loads of ways to try and
I talked to him about it.
I think you must have done that,
in the end, there is a way to do it, but it's bloody hard. Anyway,
it is hard.
But the point that comes out of that data, and there's you've got 20,000 data points, right, is you've got a really kick-ass brand-building campaign. It's going to build short-term demand immediately as well, which kind of fucks up the whole idea of, people say, no, I don't want to build brand because I need short-term results. You're going to get it.
Yeah.
And then the question I get from clients is, well, this whole long and short thing is bullshit then. It's just basic. And I'm like, no. Long gives you short. That's the good news. But as a specific example of a client, do too much short, you're getting no long.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where the long. So it is long short versus just short.
Well, it might be a wording thing, but Orlando beautifully came up with it where he just said it's lasting. It's not that you have to wait. He called them lasting effects.
It's nice. It won't catch on, but it's very nice.
No, because it doesn't fit with the. It doesn't fit with.
It actually got something like mental bazookas or something which you need to have to get the word across. Do you know what I mean? You need something more sexy than that.
Exactly.
But he's right. He's definitely right.
Okay, so rounding out the top three here, the third, based on the combination of the two, is our friend Cadbury.
Oh, I'm delighted with that.
I think, again, it's quite hard to work out number one. I think this is probably the number one story, actually, if I combine both data sets together.
That makes me happy.
Now, here's the thing, right? So, actually, I'll ask you to guess. How many new TV campaigns do you think System 1 have tested in the last 12 months?
50,000.
Not quite, but globally, yes. Actually, in the UK, 3,886. Right.
In what period?
Since January. So since January in the UK, we've automatically tested
British
just
ads,
this year. 3,886. Right. And the number one ad is
it's Garage.
Exactly. You called it, right? You didn't have the data out of the 886. The number one.
It's the best ad ever made.
Data suggests that 5.9. In fact, it tops our scale. It's the equivalent of the best Christmas ads of the last 2 years.
No, I must say that's the one thing that doesn't surprise me. But you remember, I did it before with you once. What was the campaign where you were like this? I'd written about a campaign, and you said to me, "It's not testing very well." I said, "Test it in America. It's testing great." That's
Do you
remember that? And you were like, "It is testing in America."
Sure. What was that? No, you're right. You're right.
Because you were saying it's not so good. I'm
no.
It's a British sample, mate. Do the American sample, you'll see. And you're like, "Oh,
was it aviation gin? Or...
Might have been. It was something anyway.
It was or Peloton. Maybe it's Peloton. Was it Peloton?
I think it was Peloton.
I think it's Peloton.
And
it tested like 1.5 star over here. And I'm like, dude,
and you were saying to me, this campaign isn't very good.
Don't go deep on this one. And then you're right. In America, it was great.
But yeah, Cadbury's. So Garage, if you haven't seen it, listener. Yeah. So the story I wrote, which I think I'm very pleased with because it took literally 15 years to write. The Guerrilla campaign is an amazing campaign. And it's basically the creative director at Fallon just has an idea. Let's have a gorilla playing the drums, as we know, and blah, blah, blah. The rest is history. It's a very venerated campaign. The problem with that wonderful, wonderful ad is because there wasn't really a strategy behind it. There wasn't legs. There wasn't a lasting focus. And what I would call campaignability. I know you guys call fluent device.
That's right. Yeah, fluent devices. Yeah.
But not the tangible thing.
A repeat
story.
Thing. Yeah.
The campaignability.
Yeah.
It then led to a series of ads that were shithouse.
Yeah.
I mean, not shithouse, but shithouse, right? And they really didn't have a second or third album.
Yeah.
And actually, it led, if you look from about 07 to 15, it led to a really rather bad time for Cadbury. They were really starting to hemorrhage sales and share. So in comes this really good team. Team is pretty much fixed, right? In comes VCCP. In comes some proper heritage research, loyalist research, quant research, and this really obvious but amazing insight that at the heart of this brand, from the Quakerism of the Cadbury family, from the glass and a half of the products, of the original heritage communication, is generosity. But not, let's have a party, national lottery generosity. Quiet, emotional, personal generosity. And I think it's 2017 they start. And they start with that famous ad in the corner newsagents and the little girl with a unicorn. It's beautiful, beautiful ad. Then there's the lovely one with the fella in the car, and he's nervous. He's like 50, he's going for his first new job, and his son's put him a little bar of Cadbury's in their glove compartment. It's a beautiful ad. But Garage.
Yeah.
Garage is something else. And I don't want to spoil it for listeners, but if you look at a couple of things, you should pause the podcast, go to Google and watch Garage and come back, right?
Yeah.
Because the casting is sensational. He has to look both like a potential predator and your dad. She's got to look like a loving daughter and a potential victim.
Yeah.
And I'm overstating it, but I'm not. There's a little frisson of danger in those first 5 seconds that makes everything so beautiful.
Yeah.
And there's the other than the casting, that if you look at the dialogue of that thing, the bravery of Cadbury, when he says, I'll have one of those, he doesn't name the brand. It would have been so easy to break the spell early and go, Cadbury, I'll have a buy that Cadbury's. They didn't want to sully it, and they let that happen. Yeah. So for me, I think it will become the great ad. But the point is, if you put it up against Surfer or Gorilla, it doesn't really win.
Yeah.
But that's not the point.
Yeah.
It's one of 500 ads that we'll see in 50 years, and they're all together better than that one-off ad.
Well, I can give you the data, right? So I went through the other iterations in the campaign. Mum's Birthday, 5.9. Secret Santa, 5.1. Fence, 5.1. So if you look at the System 1 database, it's very rare to get a 5-star. Like occasion, some people
1%,
like
right?
John Lewis. Yeah, John Lewis twice got a 5-star, right? And they put a lot into it. To get 5-star consistently in a campaign, that is next level. I mean, the only other advertiser I would reference that does that is Audi with Kevin the Carrot. They've got a way of telling the story.
What about Specsavers, John? Would they be close?
Specsavers would do that occasionally. Yeah, I mean, so the other ones that do occasionally would be Yorkshire Tea go 4 or 5 star. So they would be, if you put 4 and 5 stars together, they do it. Warburton's again. Warburton's would be like consistent 4 or 5 star.
Yep.
Consistent 5-star, you're in very rare territory. Very rare territory.
Well, I think that's it. VCCP need a lot of credit here, right? The work's fantastic. The client team is unchanging, which we don't talk about enough, right? It's a real strong team. The interesting thing that I got wrong about Cadbury was, a long time ago, when they started out with this generosity platform, I made the point that at the time Mondelez wasn't paying, it was paying a legally correct, relatively small amount of tax in this country. Cadbury wasn't paying any tax on its profits. And I wrote a very worthy, entirely incorrect column saying this doesn't work because you can't be claiming you're generous but not paying any tax at Cadbury. The Quaker brothers would be ashamed of you. And I missed the point, the classic point of market orientation. Your mum doesn't understand corporate tax, but she cries when the garage ad comes on. And I got a lot of flack from people saying, yeah, but they're not doing tax and all that. And I said, I know, I used to think that too, but the point is, I'm not a tax expert. I would prefer it if they paid more tax. But I'm a marketing expert, and this is great marketing, including the fact that nobody cares about the corporate tax point. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree.
It's a weird
I had
journey.
the same reaction. I think I commented very similarly actually on that point. A little side point actually. What do you think the third most effective ad on our database this year is?
So take me through 1 and 2. So Cadbury was 1.
Cadbury's number 1. Number 2, actually, interestingly, is British Bake Off.
Oh, really?
Yeah, British Bake Off done the number 2.
Yeah, okay. And number 3?
Number 3. It's a bit of a trick question. I'll tell you the answer. The 20-second cut-down version of that ad.
Wow.
Yeah.
They've got 1 and 3.
They got 1 and 3. Impressive. And also, there's a 6-second activation ad that is also in the top 10. So back to your campaign point, actually. So
it runs across different formats.
It runs formats, time lengths,
media.
Yeah, media.
Countries.
Yeah, so we've got digital. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, we've got it in Australia, dubbed into Australian.
Yeah.
The first time I saw Garage was in Australia. It had the same emotional effect, and they're dubbed into Oz. And the woman says, "Oh, it's a Cadbury campaign." And I'm like, "Hang on, that gas station done like an Aussie servo, as we called them." And I'm like, "I bet you that's dubbed." And you couldn't tell, but it had the same punch and everything.
Impressive.
No. I mean, that's your point. The campaign ability goes across media, across countries, across products, across time.
And that's when you win, doesn't it?
Well, and it links to your wear out data. So,
I've got a question for you, actually, before we jump in on this one, because I asked Ollie at VCCP, knowing you're going to come in, knowing we're going to talk about this, to put in some questions, right? So Ollie asked this question, actually. So he said, firstly, he said, "We love you, Mark." So anyway, you guys, that's nice.
Thanks, Ollie.
And then he went on to say, you've talked before about the importance of longevity, saying that wear out is a problem for marketers. How should a brand owner sell in within the organisation the idea of doubling down versus changing something?
Well, I mean, I think they won't because they don't want to. I don't think the enemy is the rest of the organisation. I don't buy this, right?
Totally agree.
You know, the CFO isn't saying, "Where's our new ad campaign?" Right? It's the marketer that's doing
That's it.
The marketers. I mean, I get this a lot at the moment. I'm trying to tighten up everyone's positioning. And I'm saying, you've got these 8 slides. You should have 1 word or 2 words, whatever. And the only pushback I get, and I get it a lot, is, but it's very hard to sell that in to the rest of the company. And I'm like, no. You're just finding excuses now, right? The problem with wear out and the problem with convincing a client team to not do a new campaign is they want to do a new campaign because they're a bit pathetic. And what would they do otherwise? Well, I would suggest the other 92% of marketing might be a start, but they want to do more ads because that's why they got in the game, right? So, yeah, I think that the challenge is convincing marketers, and it's the missing piece right now. It's interesting at Festival of Marketing. We were saying earlier, right? The corpus of advertising effectiveness isn't just clear now. Everybody knows it. It's really good, right? The missing additional piece is your new stuff, which you guys did start on. Wear out may not be real. Yeah. At least outside of marketing departments, right? Because when you first sent me the data, I was like, yeah, I'm not convinced. You've measured this, but not that. And then you measured that as well. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Then Analytic Partners had that data as well.
Well, I mean, we've tried to, generally we've tried to cut it as many ways as we can.
No, I've seen your work. I mean, you've looked for changes.
We've tried to disprove it internally, actually, and gone, like, look at ad length, look at spend, look at theme, look at... The only examples of wear out we could find is, obviously, if you do like a World Cup promotion, let's say, and, it's the World Cup, it's going to do slightly better than 2 years later when the World Cup's not on. So,
but what you showed me, not that different.
No, not even then, right? Even then it's not that different. But the crazy thing is, if you take those out, everything else actually improves. Familiarity breeds, as we often say, contentment rather than contempt.
No, I think it's a big addition. I'll give you an example of why. So I work a little bit with Tourism Australia. It's a very big thing for Australia because Susan Coghill is a wonderful CMO. Yeah, she's got $100 million budget, but literally her work drives billions of dollars or not into the country's income. Australia's a much smaller country than the UK, and tourism is much more important, right? Yeah. So it's a real big job. And Susan got this early because Susan's a great student. I always say this, and I feel like I'm doing Susan a big disservice. I said it yesterday. I said, Susan's not the smartest marketer around. And that sounds like I'm hinting that she's thick. Do you know what I mean? I don't mean it that way. I mean, Susan's the first one to go. I'm not a 180 IQ marketer doing innovative new stuff. She's a very smart woman. Susan is a student of the game. Yeah. And some marketers are. But she has learned it and is just doing it. Again, without any flash and it just works, So one of the things she picked up on, partly because she works with you guys, was this wear out thing isn't happening. So what she did with her budget was go, right, in year one, I'm going to go and spend money on a proper campaign. I got a 9-minute video. I got a cinema opening. I got Will Arnett. You know what I mean? I'm going to fucking spank it out there. You know what I mean? And she did that because A, creative is important, but B, she knows she can run that campaign for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And of course, what it means is big, flashy creative. And then for the next 4 or 5 years, the 20 points of her budget, which would have gone to another new creative, goes on media. There's your 20 extra points right there, which is probably your excess share of voice that you need.
Excess share of voice done.
It's a huge point, right? It's a huge point. I've got all these CMOs around the world trying to bend the rules of excess share of voice. If we use attention theory, and if we use codification and blah, blah, we'll beat the laws of gravity. No, you won't, right? But if you understand wear out, and if you build a good campaign, you maintain it for 5 or 6 years, there's your excess share of voice right there, combined with great creative. Yeah. That, I mean, sorry for saying this, that's a very huge point. Yeah. That if you're in charge of your budget, you should get. Yeah. But you have to have the discipline to say, all right, we don't need a new ad campaign.
You're so right. Susan, in fact, Susan in this building, actually, she came to me on a trip and said, I've got a real problem. I don't know how to sell this in. And she said, this is early stage testing, right? So we test stuff right when it's a script or very early on. She goes, it's only a 4-star. I'm like, Susan, if you're getting a 4-star at the beginning of your process, you are cast iron, guaranteed gold. I mean, you're there. You're there. I mean, we can finesse it and get you there, but honestly, you are there. But she was using the data very scientifically. The other thing she said is, she tested it in 15 markets and only 12 have got a 5-star. It's like, I mean, this is like luxury problems. You know what I mean? It's
it's important.
I mean, even the statistical variation across 15 different tests would give you one or two that wouldn't
No,
be right.
but,
You know
I
what
mean,
But
the problem is we focus on the Cadburys, right?
I know,
so she's
exactly.
like, I want 5.9.
Yeah, exactly. She was there. But imagine like you getting a creative that worked across all those different cultures and different contexts and different understanding of Australia and all that kind of thing. I mean, that's really, really impressive. But you're right. But she was going by the data and making,
She's a truly great marketer. It's funny, I work with the company. It's a good company that has the license for John West Tuna in Australia. And I tried, and I think failed, to get the fisherman fight in the grizzly bear.
Yes,
I'm like,
got data on that
make it again.
Yeah.
And they were like, I'm like, just use it again. You own the brand.
Yeah.
The ad will be available, or refilm the ad.
Yeah.
It will destroy most people don't
just
know
put
the
it back
ad.
on air, right? It's funny. It's obviously salmon. It's obviously John West. Done. Like easy.
We're done, right?
Yeah.
The only thing I saw, and it was briefly yesterday, is Vuitton have started a campaign, I think it's Vuitton, with Twiggy. Twiggy made an ad for Louis Vuitton, and it's an ad I know, it must be like sort of 64, 65, with a little baton bag, which are these very small, like pochette bags, from the 60s. And she's kind of holding it, and Twiggy's being beautiful and 60s and everything. And they just replicated it 50 years later. Same bag, same jewelry, same pose, same everything. I thought that was very, very nice.
That's nice.
Because it does speak to Vuitton's quality, which is
timeless.
If you really own Vuitton stuff, it gets banged around a bit.
Yeah.
But I've bought Vuitton stuff for some of my business colleagues over the years, especially when I was working for Louis Vuitton. And they still go on about the fact that they've had this bag off me for 15 years and it's still brand new. Do you know what I mean? It is a special thing, So there may be a little movement back towards it. But I think that the end of wear out, at least among the market, is an interesting one. My question for you, John, though, is what's the balance between just literally running the same ad or it being a variation on a theme? So in Cadbury's case, they have this platform, right?
Yeah.
They could have just kept running.
Yeah.
When we look at the data, gorilla forever, right?
Yeah.
So is there anything in the data that tells you
we
what to do?
We got cases on both, right? So take Christmas, right? Christmas just gives us a good opportunity to look at this because most people change at Christmas. You got Coke Holidays Are Coming, which has run for 25 years, effectively the same ad, and it's gradually got better, but probably plateaued at around 5.0 star. Kevin the Carrot campaign started at a 3.6, I think, went up to 5, and it's now got to 5.9. So actually what they've done is, really interestingly, and these guys are literally textbooks. So they say they have 1 month off a year. It's December, right? Because that's when it's made and you can't change it. From January, they're starting on next Christmas. But they immediately start with the next version of Kevin, which is new. But what they do is they bring in what kind of news stories, what cultural changes, what voiceover. Yeah. And what they do is they test every little element with us, right? So they'll go, Jim Broadbent voiceover, does that work or not? Did people get the Marcus Rashford joke? Which scenes are working, not working? So it'd be a fresh idea. But what they've done is actually, I call it the Coke Truck Index, right? Coke Truck is like the old McDonald's kind of burger index. You know what I mean? Exactly, right? That's the benchmark, right? But what they've shown is actually evolving a creative idea. Consistently over time, they've now had 2 years ahead of
you beat the truck.
They beat the trucks for the last 2 years.
Well, and it also future-proofs it, right? So at some point, it does get vintage and old. Not if you keep adapting each year. So it does mean campaign ability is the right answer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a long bet, right? And it'll outsee us all. But if Cadbury are as smart as I think they are, this is a 50-year campaign, right? Definitely. I mean, I use Kit Kat as my example at Festival. I had to find an example of a brand that is properly, simply positioned on one or two attributes, differentiated, therefore relatively, but also was distinctive in its assets and codes. And Kit Kat, if you go, it's 50 years of it. Take a break, take a Kit Kat, be refreshed. That's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing else, right? And then you got the red, you got the twigs, you got the snap, and you're there. And then you go back for the work, and it's there for 50 years.
There, yeah.
That's a campaign ability that just keeps giving.
Well, let me ask you on that. Why did difference versus distinctiveness suddenly become the biggest conversation we were having?
I made it the biggest. I did.
Yeah.
No, so there's two parts to this. Again, I'm going to go on my Ehrenberg Bass train for a minute here. I love Ehrenberg Bass. There's always a sprinkle of extra syrup in their science, in my opinion. They go about 30% too far. When they brought distinctiveness into the marketing mindset, it is the great discovery of modern marketing. because it didn't exist before, right? It isn't like a new name for something. They properly found this out. And it's the most important fucking thing, right? It's amazing, right? It's amazing. Mass marketing and getting that legit again, that was kind of a change of, that was going back to something else. Still an amazing achievement. But calling it distinctiveness, looking at distinctive assets, tying them into category entry points and bringing it to mind, the importance of sale is a fucking amazing thing. But they just couldn't help themselves and they had to go too far. And their white suits have a little bit of extra sparkle there. Do you know what I mean? So they did it, if you look at the Red Book, they did it, distinctiveness is the new differentiation. And again, they sort of caveat with differentiation is possible, but only in a basic way. But in the book, there's a table that says old past worldview, positioning and differentiation, new worldview, distinctiveness, right? And so marketers gradually read the book and gradually fell in love with distinctiveness, but also this stupid differentiation is not possible. We've disproved it, right? And it's not Ehrenberg Bass's fault. It's the sort of second tier disciplines who sort of trot it all out but don't really understand it and just go all over the shop. Right? There's no such thing as different. We've disproved differentiation. And I'm like, at the most face valid point of view, that's clearly horseshit. I always use like a Dell laptop and an Apple laptop. Do you really think that these two are perceived to be the same? Yeah. So I was on a mission for a while and I couldn't work through it. And in the end, it comes down to one simple mistake that even Michael Porter makes. And it's that everyone tied differentiation to unique. All the way back. Go back to the Ted Bates Agency and Rossa Reeves. The USP, the U was unique. Yes, you find a unique thing. Yeah. Michael Porter comes in and says, if you go down a differentiation strategy path, you find something unique, which drives price premium. Yeah, that's not true. It's simply not true. And yet in our lexicon, differentiation became finding something unique. The minute you take unique out and you think, well, maybe it's not unique. And I use the example of height. I'm taller than you by a foot, right? By an inch. You're not a midget, right? And I'm different from you as a result. It's not that I've invented height. Yeah. It's not that you don't have height. It's that I've relatively more of it than you. Yeah. And the minute you get that, it changes everything. Because what it says is differentiation is not guaranteed for most brands. It may not exist for most brands. But relative differentiation is possible if you choose very carefully those points. So I've been on a mission this year to try and balance it out, but apply bothism so that I'm not going to be this childish idiot, part of the marketing debate. Just differentiation beats distinctiveness. No, it doesn't. Distinctiveness beats, come on, right? Back to the idea. Back
to the whole two truths in one.
Two ideas,
two
right?
ideas together.
Brands can, back to Kit Kat, be positioned tightly on a couple of relative points. If you want a quick break, category entry point, refreshment, quick break, Kit Kat, right? We're going to try and own, but we're going to have a relative association for those things in the mind of the market.
I think the point to build as well is that where marketers have gone wrong is the height difference matters in certain contexts, right? And that's where people lose it because they go, we're slightly higher, but if the consumer doesn't give a shit about being slightly higher, what's the point? And, we end up having this arms race, trying to get to a point of difference that actually isn't relevant.
No, and it's turned into this esoteric nonsense where brands literally have 12 slides for positioning. Yeah. The words that they're putting in the positioning are ridiculous. The champion of truth and families and all this rubbish. And what we have to do, and so the addendum to this whole, can you be differentiated in theory? Yes, relatively. But if you want it as a brand, and most brands are never going to get it because they're so shit at positioning, you have to completely strip back how you're doing positioning. In my opinion, to a single page, which is these are the three things we want to position as. There might be some hygiene things in there as well, but these are the three things we choose to aim to have relative advantages over the competitor brands. Yeah. And then next to it, here's my distinctive brand assets. Yeah. That's how we're going to drive our distinctiveness. Yeah. And with this, we will go to war, right? That, as you know better than me, that is so far from how big brands currently wank it all out there with 800 slides and complex words and a parallelogram and a fucking keyhole. That isn't just not working. It actually works against these brands getting any form of differentiation. And
totally.
The last point I'd make is not only do I still think distinctiveness is important, I think in most cases it's probably still more important.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, a lot of the data now suggests for younger, newer brands or with younger, newer customers, it's still differentiation that drives it more. And as things mature, it becomes distinctiveness.
Well, that makes sense because you need to lock into the memory structures you've established already.
Get into
you're
trial,
triggering those purchases.
Yep.
Yeah, it makes loads of sense.
So that's the war. But I'm getting loads of delightful flack at the moment because everyone's like, oh, this tiresome debate about differentiation and distinctiveness. Why are we talking about this again? It's because we talked about it wrongly. And I fully admit that I have singularly attempted to reignite the discussion so we could right an old wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we'll see if it works. Someone said something interesting this week. They said, the clients are ready for this.
Yeah.
They've been doing it anyway, but they sort of feel like, well, I can talk a little bit about my positioning, my differentiation. And I think that's true, right?
That's good. Yeah, really, really good. Really good. Next question from Ollie, actually. You sent me a few. But on Cadbury, we don't show the product being eaten or even unwrapped in order to make the story feel authentic. Is authenticity relevant to marketers? Or is authenticity overrated?
No. I think I would draw a slightly wider net than Orlando's doing there. I think you're right. They don't show someone in that particular ad eating the chocolate. But what that ad is the purchase act, the giving act, the product itself is central, literally in the center of the dyad of the ad, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you have to consume it. I think it has to be woven into the narrative, and then it's authentic, right? It doesn't need to be the consumption act. It needs to be right in the middle. The old bad ads where they'd be like, a 30-second mystery story, and right at the end, and it was Lilt.
And it was us.
It was us. Well, who knew that? See ya. I've just put on my budget. Woohoo, surprise. Forget about me now. So I think that's where the authenticity comes from. It's run right through, right? And if you actually, once you see Garage once, you realise literally the bar of Cadbury is there for the whole ad.
Oh, it's there.
Do you know what I mean?
She's almost feeling the packaging at one point, isn't she? It's the sensory bit of it is amazing. I mean, actually, Orlando, to quote him, actually, his left and right brain features really help understand this because there's so much more power in implicit communication. You don't have to make it, he would call it like flat and abstract, where you just put put it right in front of your eyes kind of thing. Our right brains can detect things and pick things up. And the other thing, of course, is fluent. Specsavers being a good example. If you start owning an idea, people start to recognize the idea playing out even before you've shown the products.
And my point, which Orlando's made much better than me, is when you join those dots cognitively yourself, the impact is significantly more powerful than it being presented to you later, right?
Totally, yeah.
And so it's a risky game, but if you can have that synapse that you have to close, you know what I mean?
He's got a beautiful quote about this, which I can't remember, but it's something about leaving a bit of work for the audience actually enables it to be remembered.
That's right, and the memorability and the power of it suddenly goes through the roof. I think that's the whole point about playing with codes, which for me is a super important part of distinctive assets. When you play with them and people have to join the dots to go, hang on, the Carlsberg is red, right? It makes it more green in your mind.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
100%, totally. We've covered actually one of his questions, but the final question he asked is, you kindly pointed out the Cadbury turnaround was inspired by going back to the brand's astonishing history to find answers for the future. Do marketers use a brand's history enough? And if they don't, how might we change it?
That's a real great question. So I was trained by Americans, right? So I was in America for brand management, not at its genesis, because that goes back to P&G, but the David Archer, Kevin Keller era, when I grew up, late 80s, early 90s, was absolutely empirical, right? You do research on the brand in order to understand the brand, right, from its consumers. And then in the second phase of my career, I go off to LVMH in Paris, and I get a complete French beating, right? The French aren't even that empirical when it comes to brands, right? They go straight to history. They go back to literally the origins of the brand, the founder. When I did all the work on Dom Perignon, we stood at his grave. We stayed in Asnières. We started there, right? And those two, I call them eyes, right? The French eye and the American eye. If you put them together, and when I do the mini MBA in brand management, when we do the modules on brand research, it's half about the heritage of the brand.
Yeah.
And it's half about then a decent bit of qual and quant research on the current brand, a little bit of loyalty research, and you put it all together. So Orlando's right. You can't manage a brand if you don't know where it's come from.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a bunch of French wank, but in history, you will get so many. I mean, there's a belief in marketing that whoever was managing the brand 100 years ago was somehow like an idiot, right? They were just as smart as us, and they probably came up with equally, if not better, ideas.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you look into the archive a little bit? When I worked on Hennessy, it's a great story. When I worked on Hennessy, the CEO, Bernard Payon, is a brilliant CEO. We had this strategy for a little while. So Hennessy lost the patent on XO I think it was about 200 years ago, right? Some idiot in the 19th century forgot to renew the fact we created XO, right? Extra.
Wow.
So I should explain to everyone. So Hennessy is the cognac. It's made from a blend of different wine, and Extra Old XO was a very special sub-brand of Hennessy. Someone forgot to renew the patent, and now we have what we have today, which is every cognac has an Extra Old one. Tequilas have Extra Old ones. Chinese restaurants have Extra Old ones, and Hennessy created it. So my idea to Mr. Payon at one point was, because Hennessy's comes from a family of assassins, it's tough and all that. I said, let's go and sue every company that's used XO. And he's like, but we can't win the case. I'm like, I know, but if we can get on the front page of the Wall Street Journal with the court case, everyone will learn the story that they've forgotten, that we invented XO. And he said, man, he's like, go to the archive then and see if we've got a strong enough case, just to prove that we did, right? So Hennessy has a library, has an archive. And so we go and we dig through it all, right? And I have to find the manifests showing that there was, before a certain point, it was like, 1800, that we had an XO. So we went to the ship manifest, they're there. It was actually to London from Cognac. And there it is, big line saying 8 barrels of Hennessy XO to be shipped to such and such on the Strand. And then in this incredibly electric moment, underneath it, there's a second line that says, also 12 crates of Hennessy XXO.
Ooh.
XO wasn't the first invention. There's a sub-brand that we forgot about. It started XL.
Wow.
So I took that and he was, because he's a Hennessy man for all these years, and he's like, And about 2 years later, there's a gap in the portfolio in travel retail between Paradis and XO. And XXO came back.
One.
And Mr. Payon sent me a bottle
That's
with a
worth
lovely
a few
note.
quid.
And, it's got nothing to do with me, really.
Yeah.
But I have a letter from the CEO of Hennessy saying, voilà, c'est ça.
I love it.
And it's lovely because history sometimes teaches us things we've
I had a
forgotten.
kind of similar story to that, actually. So I was working on Lucozade when the sugar tax came into the UK, and we were forced to reformulate because of the government regulations to bring down the amount of sugar used. And we were thinking, how do we tackle this and so on? And we actually went back to the history archives in the factory and looked at the original recipe for Lucozade. So, I mean, I'll do the round numbers, but let's say there were 40 grams of glucose and we're having to go down to 20, right?
Yeah.
That's rough numbers, something like that. And anyway, one of the team came back really, really excited and said, I've just been through the archives. And Lucozade was invented because what was happening, this is back in the 20s, a surgeon was worried because kids were dying not in operations, but they didn't recover from the operation. So they'd be having an operation, and then in the sensitive time afterwards where you're trying to get your strength back, they literally weren't surviving that bit, forget the operation. And he invented this kind of mix of glucose as a way of kind of getting energy back into the body to help with recovery.
Important.
So it was an incredibly powerful thing. But we actually found the original recipe, before it became a commercial drink, the actual recipe, and it was 20 grams of glucose. Was here to work all his experiments. That's the amount that was enough to get the body going without overloading it with sugar and all this sort of thing. So weirdly, although we never intended to get
you
into
were back to where you started.
We were actually back to where we started with his original story about the optimum amount of glucose to help you recover, from a situation.
It's magic because you do have that Indiana Jones feeling for a few seconds where, we found the founder of Krug, Mr. Krug, I forget his name, maybe Thomas, don't quote me, Mr. Krug's original diary, which he left to his son about how to run the winery at the vineyard. Sorry, I'm not the Australian hound. And because it was originally a German family, it was much more clear and laid out and didactic. And it was kind of a manual. And the best bit about it was we were struggling with what should be every luxury brand is gold if they don't know their history, And it was this beautiful dark cherry handbook, and at one point he refers to it as his favourite colour. I'm like, and there we go.
There you are.
And so you have this lovely electric moment, don't you, where you're like, And I've had it with live founders. I had it with Donna Karan. Donna Karan, by the time I worked with her, would have been 60.
Yeah.
And she would have founded that house in her late 20s. And so we were going through some of the archive photographs, and she got quite upset because she was remembering things that she's a billionaire now, right? But when she set it up, she had no money. She was so why did you do this, Donna? Oh, I don't know. Oh, that's why, because of Stephen, her husband at the time. And so even living founders forget this stuff.
Yeah.
So I think in the history, particularly in the first few, I always say when we do a diagnosis, the first 5 to 10 years of a brand's life are often these electric sparks. And I tell you what it is, John, and don't get me started on this, I'll talk all day. It's constraints and accidents become the strategy. Like in Sephora's case, Sephora, when it was acquired by LVMH, all the other beauty brands, the big ones, didn't want to supply them anymore because they're like, well, Chanel's not going to supply LVMH, you know what I mean? And suddenly they had empty shelves, right? And so Sephora had to go out and find all these hot, cool, independent brands to fill the shelves. It became one of Sephora's greatest things.
So many, whenever you read the stories about how the brands became, it so often is a constraint, isn't it? Or an issue or an accident or
that drives
the innovation
success.
that turns out to be.
No, it's true. Madame Clicquot went to Russia in order to find a market that when everything was depressed, Dom Perignon invented champagne because the Pinot and the Chardonnay on their own weren't good. It's a very American thing. In the toughest moment, you find yourself, but often also a path to glory.
Totally.
And I think you almost want to engineer that. But it's the first 5 years of a brand's history, maybe 10, where those sparky moments happen.
And you can lose that, can't you, if it becomes too corporate and you lose that. Yeah, definitely.
When you start strategizing too early, people say to me, like, we founded a brand. Do we do brand strategy from the start? And I'm like, no, let it percolate. It's like having a kid, right? For the first 4 or 5 years, they're basically just, things in the world. It's only around 6 or 7 you can see this thing has been formed. Yeah. Now you get to know what it properly is, But that historical research, to Orlando's point, the French eye combined with the American eye. Because the other thing is, if you get too much of that French stuff, it turns into hoo-ha. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I've worked with French branding experts, right? It's a long fucking afternoon. Do you know what I mean? They're full of shit, right? Yeah. But I've also worked with very rational American market researchers, and they don't fucking get it, right? If I can have some French magic driven by the history, and I can have some American rational, good old-fashioned quant data, boom,
there we are.
We're going to be all right. You know what I mean? And I think that's it's one of my lessons. It's a great lesson for how to do diagnosis. Yeah. And you can see it on my mini MBA in brand management. It's basically, let's talk about history, because you find the codes as well.
You do, yeah.
The great ads of the past,
all there.
But let's also build a questionnaire.
Love it. So big thank you to Ollie from VCCP.
Yeah, good questions, Ollie. Set me up there.
Well worked. I thought I'd end with 10 really quick fire questions for you, just
okay.
As if you weren't on your toes.
I thought that's what we just done. Go on.
Exactly. There you go. All right. How tricky was the Bud Light article to write?
I only wrote it because so many people said they were waiting for me to write it.
Yeah.
And normally you get a bit of that, and that's a signal not to write it. Because you're like, if they expect me to do it, I'm not going to do it. But there were so many people, I'm like, you know what? I'm actually going to have to write this, right? So then it was easy to write. Yeah. What to say? And it links to that point that America, the main conclusion for me is Bud is trying to do mass marketing, and you can't do mass marketing in America because the society is broken down the middle.
Yeah, yeah, very good. Was the Twitter rebrand to X the biggest mistake of this year?
Yeah.
Which market has suffered most in this 2023, do you think?
UK. I mean, you've got to pause on that one, right? Yeah. Last October, I mean, I'm British. I carry a British passport. I happen to live in Australia, but I'm very proudly British. It was very hard for me to come back here. Liz Truss had done. I'm not political, but Liz Truss was clearly a moron. The Queen had died. I'm not a royalist, but that was, sad. It was a passing. The economy was down. COVID was still fucking things up. There was a massive recession. The pound was all over the place. Heathrow was run by fucking idiots. Every time I went through Heathrow, it was like, who is,
where's your baggage? Yeah.
What is this? You know what I mean? What is this line? How can you show our country like this, And 2 people were staffing it with mobile phones. They were both like 12, you know what I mean? So it was really hard to come back and see all that. And I think all that's happened this year is the rest of the world has caught up with how shit it all is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I definitely don't bet against Britain, but we need a
bounce. Yeah.
We need something, right? We really need something, and I'm looking for what it will come. It might come from a World Cup, but we need not cricket because nobody really fucking cares. We need something. We need something.
We do. What's the biggest skill that marketers don't have?
Managing up and across. We talked about this. We're doing this mini MBA management, quick plug. And so we have 10 professors. The 10 courses you do on an MBA apart from marketing. One of the interesting ones, Yale, who teaches sort of, managing organizations. The thing that, and I'm doing it as a student, but the thing that I can see marketers most loving in the course from all the things we've got, like Roger Mine does strategy and accounting and finance, is how she captures managing your boss and managing those across from you that aren't your reports. I just don't think we have any clue about that.
That's such a skill. It doesn't matter how good your plan is if you can't get it signed off.
And the key point is you can be fully trained in this.
Yeah.
Like accounting, right?
That's what I realised a few years ago when I was at Britvic, actually, is that you should have a plan of like who's going to decide, what influence they have, what position are they for or against this thing, what am I going to do, how am I going to address their concerns? It can be a lot more logical than maybe it seems.
It's one of the mind-boggling things about, it shouldn't be mind-boggling, but you sit in these, we have each class is about 2 hours, and they are the best professors in the topics, right? The professor that does Barry, does negotiations, in 2 hours, it changes everything forever. You just go, to your point, there's a way of doing this. Oh, fuck, yeah, you know what I mean? And I think that's astonishing. But managing up and across is the one that I think
definitely
we have to do
big skill. Does having a mini MBA reduce your chance of getting fired?
I don't know. It definitely increases your chances of being hired.
Okay.
And we definitely don't talk about it because about half of our candidates are sponsored by their companies, so we don't talk about it in the brochure for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
I can tell you, though, and again, I don't know if this is good or bad, literally, I was talking to a guy about it last night. He'd just been so we did an event last night for the Marketing Academy charity, and we gave away a place on the mini MBA for the best question of the night. And one of the guys said, I've just been fired today. What do I do? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, look, mate, whatever the fucking question is, you're going to win,
prize.
And then I talked to him afterwards over a beer, and I said to him, do the brand management course, because there are hundreds of brand management jobs, and the minute you do the mini MBA in brand management, everyone that's ever done the course gets every job they ever apply for. Because you're like, there's 10 candidates, I'm trained, I know what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's like shooting fish in a barrel.
Exactly.
Whether they get, I don't know. I cannot. I've no data on that.
The reverse probably is true. But we'll just go with probably. The odds are with you. What new marketing BS is going to be added to your list, but come the end of this year?
I'm not much taken with full funnel marketing. I think it's good in principle, but it ends up being target everything all the time, which is the opposite of strategy. I think we've interpreted it badly. That's the one I worry about the most.
Okay. Are we already past peak AI?
I saw something in New York last week that should scare the fuck out of everyone. Yeah? Ooh. So you can, I don't want to go into too much detail because I'm not allowed to. You can put they put my company name into a box. They gave me excess share of voice, distinctive brand assets, correct media mix, key segments, category entry points.
Holy smoke.
Price optimization. Yeah, in the keystroke. And I sat there and I looked at some of it and I said, have you got any triangulation? There's a couple of sales guys in the room, and there's a couple of smart boys further in the back that did it. So I just ignored the two sales boys and I looked at the sort of spooky looking guy in the back. I said, have you got any triangulation data or any of this shit? And he's like, yeah, there's a couple of points we can show you. So they can show you a legitimate empirical data point versus what their program has just pulled and scraped. Yeah? Yeah, 91, 92%. So I think media planning as a pursuit is over.
Yeah.
I think econometrics as a separate entity is over. But it won't happen overnight. ChatGPT is like a little fucking toy in the corner.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
There's another deeper bunch of spooks building shit that we as yet find difficult to understand. System One's place in this is you have a primary data set which you need to protect.
Yes. Yeah.
Which would make the AI smarter.
Exactly.
But as you've already worked out, John, once it starts to escape in a presentation, in a report, the pigeons are loose.
It's feeding the world. Yeah, it's true.
I think there's a time coming where, like, look at excess share of voice. Everybody wants it. Very few people have it. This system is already able to basically produce it in 2 seconds, right? And then think about this. Once you have all that panoply of data, the AI algorithm can then maximize within those things to then do your Monte Carlo analysis and spit out, these are the 3 things you should do. So I think whoever nails that, and it will take someone with real skill and marketing knowledge, possibly.
That's the key thing, isn't it?
That's the key. Yeah, well, the good news is only the marketers can do this. There's a bunch of spooks from Bain. They'll have a go at it, but they'll get it wrong.
Yeah.
But I think it will change we're nowhere near peak. So Bill Gates is right. For the next 3 years, it will disappear. But unlike other things, it will come back.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, final question then. I think you've already referenced it anyway, but Marketing MBA has now extended. What new courses are there that we can look forward to doing?
Well, thanks for that intro, John. I appreciate that. We've always done the mini MBA in marketing. We've always done the mini MBA in brand management, and they continue to be very successful. We wanted an extra course for people who'd done those courses, and the ambition was, the point of mini MBA was we took my marketing course from business school, turned it into a 10-week course. Could we go out and get the 10 best professors from the 10 best business schools to each teach a 2-hour masterclass in each of the management subjects: finance, marketing, negotiation, strategy, etc. And so we hunted them down over 2 years, incredibly long-winded contractual negotiations, then briefing and then filming and teaching them how to do it. It's interesting when someone comes in from the business school world, they look at the camera as if they're talking to 100 people, and you have to always say to them, there's just one person there. Yeah. Think about it that way. Try again. And I think we're running it right now. We're testing it with 300 marketers. I think we have something very special. No one has time to spend 2 fucking years at business school, 6 hours a day in a windowless room.
Yeah.
We don't, and we're old fucks, right?
Exactly, yeah.
You look at these kids now who are 19, right? How are we going to get them into a room for 4 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, 5 days a week? Get out of it, right? So what we're trying to do is not replace the MBA. It will die on its own merits. But to create for busy marketers, this is definitely not as good as going to Harvard, right? But it's 10 weeks and it's 2 hours a week long, and it's good. Yeah. And you can learn negotiations, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I'm pretty bullish about it. It's what I wanted to do. I'm not really involved in it as much, in the sense that I'm not teaching as much. I help pick the professors. So we'll see. But I'm excited. Everyone that I talk to about it wants to do it, which I always think is a good sign. Right? When's that launching that thing?
Yeah, exactly.
So I hope it's going to be, we'll sell it as the sort of the second course. Come and do marketing. And then now you understand it, let's do this. I think it's the one. And then I'm redoing the mini MBA marketing completely, because some of the things, differentiation, mass marketing, have changed a lot. And I think it's time not just to update material, but to completely restructure the narrative of these sections, because marketing has changed a bit, right? So we're on that platform too. But we go from strength to strength. We're in 40 countries. It's great. It's a great business.
Amazing. Well done. Congratulations.
Thanks, mate.
And well done again on being the Gary Vee of Australia.
It's something I really take seriously. And it will only be complete for me when someone, and I'm speaking to you, listener, confronts Gary Vee at one of his religious style conferences and says, "Gary, we love you. You're like the Mark Ritson of America."
The world will be complete.
Full circle.
On that bombshell. Mark, thank you, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for listening to Uncensored CMO. I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to never miss an episode again, please do hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Never miss an episode again. Thank you for listening or watching. You can follow me at Twitter at Uncensored CMO, or over on LinkedIn, I am under John Evans. See you next time.